So if you've been following this channel for a while, you'll know that dbte.ch.com or dbtech.com is one of the resources that I use for supplemental information for some of the videos that I release on this channel. Now, this website is actually being self-hosted on my local network using a Docker application called BookStack. And in this video, I want to show you how to install BookStack on CasaOS on a Raspberry Pi 4. But first, a quick message from today's video sponsor. YourCDKey.com is a great place to get Windows 10 keys at incredibly low prices. So here we are on the Microsoft Windows 10 Pro page, and right here you can see the current price is $20.05. But if you use the coupon code that's in the description down below, you'll get it even cheaper. So I'm going to go ahead and paste that in here and click apply. And now our new total for Windows 10 Pro is about 15 bucks. Now I have the option to go ahead and view the keys right here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. Then I'll click on get the key. And then I'm going to come over here, and right there you can change the product key. So go ahead and click on that. I'm going to go ahead and change the product key right here. So I've entered my key and I'll click next. Then I'll click on activate. And here we can see that Windows is activated. Next, what we want to do is go ahead and validate the key installation, and right there you can see the Windows 10 Professional Edition is permanently activated. So head on over to YourCDKey.com to get your next Windows 10 Pro key at ridiculously low prices. So we actually took a look at BookStack about a year ago, just using it on a normal Portainer install on an x86 platform. And in this video, like I said, I want to show you how to do this on a new system that we've been taking a look at recently called CasaOS. First, let's actually kind of dig around a little bit and take a look at what you can do with BookStack if you're so inclined. So we're actually going to take a look at a live instance. Like I said, this is the actual install for my DB Tech website, and this is the homepage. Currently, it is in dark mode. You can actually toggle that over here on the right side pretty easily. Go back into light mode if you want to do that. So this is kind of like I'm logged in as an administrator, so that we can kind of see the full scope of everything that's available on this setup. So one of the things that I really like about BookStack is that you can be pretty granular about how you break things down and categorize things here, whether it's shelves. So maybe you've got one topic of information that you want to store. You might categorize that by shelves and then further reduce that by books and chapters and pages and things like that. You can really kind of get granular about how you want to organize your information here. And of course, if we click on books, then we can see all of the books that are on here. And of course, there are multiple pages of books available. You can create new books just by clicking over here on the right side where it says create new book. And we can do, something like test book. And then we can give it a description. If you wanted to, you can give it a cover image like we saw. Let's actually go into, let's look at some of these other Casa installs. So you can see that I've got a cover image on some of these and I don't have a cover image on some of the others. And this is basically this little image right here at the top is the cover image to which they are referring right here. You can also tag your books if you wanted to categorize things that way and search things by tags. You can do that as well. I'm just going to go ahead and click on Save Book here. And then you've got some more options. You can, right here we're logged into the book, if you wanted to call it that. You can add new chapters and pages. You can do that, the same thing over here as well. You can edit this, you can sort, you can copy this. Like if you wanted to use this as like a template, you could absolutely do that. You can set permissions and you can enable custom permissions. So that you can decide who gets access to what. You can actually see that I've got a Patreon roll in here. I haven't done anything with it yet, but it's there because I wanted to do some testing with some things there. You can change the owner. If you had multiple users on here that were contributing content, you could change the owner to whoever it needed to be for that. Of course, you can delete, you can favorite, and then you can also export, are kind of the basic settings there. But let's go ahead and just add a new page just so we can kind of see what this looks like. We'll give this a second to load. I guess while it's doing that, I can say this is a test page, and then it just kind of lays out like you would expect it to with a fairly basic WYSIWYG, or what you see is what you get editor across here at the top, where you can do formats and all of your bold and underline, strike through, superscript, subscripts, change text colors, change alignments, do numbered list or bulleted lists, increase indents, do tables, images, links, horizontal lines, drawing, insert and edit media, clear text formatting, view the source code, or go full screen. So entering content into this is actually really, really easy. In fact, let's actually come back out of here. And let's take a look, like, for instance, at this link ace option that we've got here. So this is the book, this is the page. And then in here, we've got, where I've got, the title across the top. I've done some italicizing there. Other thing I like about this is you can highlight and link specifically to that bit of text with the little pop-up that's there as well. So I really dig that they've got that. You can do, like, this is inline code right here. You can do code blocks. In fact, if we come over here and click on edit, so like here, if I click this, you can see that the whole thing lights up because we're using an inline code here. This is a code block, so it would be this option right here. You can do block quotes, paragraphs. You can change your formats there. If you wanted to edit this, you can just double click it and then edit your text, and it will keep all of your formatting, which I really do appreciate that they've got there as well. There's actually a change log option, so you can keep track of changes that were made to individual items inside of BookStack. So very, very useful as far as that's concerned. I'm actually not going to save anything that I may have done there. So that kind of gives you a rough idea as far as how to administer content. Of course, everybody's going to use this a little differently. So I don't want to go too much into this is the right way to do it, because there isn't really a right way to do things when you're using BookStack, in my opinion. The other thing that we want to take a look at while we're still here is actually under settings. So we've got the option to allow public access. That's how I currently have this set up, so that things that are made publicly available are just that. They're publicly available, so you don't have to have a membership or an account or whatever in order to read the content. Now, if you wanted everything to be very private and so that you would have to have an account and be logged in, of course, to see the content, you could uncheck this box to disallow public content. You can add a little security thing they've got here for if you upload images, that it will scan them and look for malicious things that may be injected into the image. So that's there. You can enable or disable comments. I've always got comments disabled just because it'll be a nightmare otherwise. Below that, you can, of course, change the application name to whatever will show up in the tab up here at the top. You can also show the name in the header if you want to do that. I don't, because I've got a little logo up there. The page editor, you can actually change from WYSIWYG to Markdown. I prefer WYSIWYG. I'm terrible with Markdown. I just can never remember all of the things. So I don't use Markdown. Again, application logo, that's what I've got uploaded here that you can see again up here at the top. Primary application color or application primary color, whatever. You can customize the colors in this through the application primary color as well as the content colors and that sort of thing. You can change the homepage to wherever you'd like it to be, whether it's the default books, shelves, or a specific page, if you wanted to do that. Footer links, we actually didn't talk about yet, but footer links are there. And if we actually scroll down, we can see that those are the two links right here. So that's what that is for. If you wanted to add tracking code or JavaScript or whatever, you can add that right up here. You can actually see I've got a little bit of CSS up there and then some stuff for Cloudflare so that it'll track some things for me in the background. Below that, we've got the option to enable or disable user registration. Of course, I've got that disabled. This is more here's some information, read it, and do what you need to do with it. Not a lot of interaction on here, and that's by default. Of course, if you did have registration enabled, you could then decide how you wanted to allow or what role you wanted to give somebody as a default. I would definitely stay away from admin or editor. Viewer or public would probably be the more adequate thing to do. And then, of course, Patreon was something else entirely, like I said earlier. If you wanted to only allow people from a certain domain name to be able to register, so like, let's say you had your own domain name and you only wanted people with an email address on that domain to be able to register, you could put that in right here. And then also you can require email confirmation. So let's say somebody signs up, they will then get an email, they'll click the link, then it will bring them back here and confirm their account. So very, very straightforward stuff there. I will say, in order for the require email confirmation, you will have to have email enabled in your Docker container, and we will cover that. But just know that also for that to happen, you would also want this to be on a domain, which we're not going to cover in this video. However, I am going to be doing an Nginx proxy manager on CasaOS video here very, very soon. In fact, probably later this week. So definitely get subscribed if you're interested in learning how to do that for your CasaOS setup. So let's go back up to the top. Here we can see what version we're on. Of course, there's an option for maintenance where you can, clear the recycle bin, run cleanup, send a test email. Of course, you would again need to have email set up in your Docker image or your Docker container in order for that to work. Over here, we've got an audit log of basically everything that anybody has done as far as creating, modifying, updating whatever content on your site. You can keep track of who did what, which I really do appreciate. Over here, we've got users, and again, we've got me as the admin and then a public user that's just needed for the site to function properly, I think. Below that, or next to that, I guess we've got roles where you can, set up additional roles so that you can give specific roles different permissions to access different things. You could actually set up permissions for books and shelves and all kinds of things for only certain roles to have access to those things. So you can definitely take a look at that. And then webhooks. If you've got any need for webhooks, you can absolutely do that as well. That covers settings. So we've got option at the top. We've got my favorites. I don't have anything in there because I haven't favorited anything since I wrote everything. View profile. Here you can kind of see how many pages I've created, how many books I've created, chapters, shelves, how long I've been a user, and then everything that I've created as far as that's concerned. And then there is logout and light mode. So that's kind of the basic setup for how this works. It's very, very user friendly. It's very easy to use, both from a user perspective as well as an administrative perspective. And luckily, it's also very, very easy to install in Docker. They've done a great job at making it very easy to install in Docker. So let's take a look at how to do that now. So here we are on my CasaOS dashboard. Here you can see that we've actually got BookStack and BookStack DB installed here, as well as AdGuard Home from our previous video, and then Nginx Proxy Manager because I wanted to test it out and verify that it works. It does. So there's a video, like I said earlier, coming up about that here very, very soon. So of course, if I just click BookStack, it'll take me over to here like we would expect. However, I want to show you how to install BookStack. So let's do this. Let's uninstall. And then let's also do the same thing with the database here. So we're going to click uninstall there and click uninstall. Okay, so one of the things to keep in mind is when you uninstall an application via the dashboard here, you're not actually removing any of that information from the server itself, from your Raspberry Pi. It's still there. In fact, we're gonna talk about that in another video as well, as far as how to properly update containers on CasaOS, because it's not terribly intuitive, but I'll make sure it is in the upcoming video on that. So here we are, we're logged in to CasaOS here. So what I want to do is actually do a CD into home and then an LS. And here we can see that I've got Docker and Pi. So I'm going to actually, Pi was created as the home directory for the Pi user. Docker is another directory that I created specifically for Docker applications. That's why I've got that Docker folder there. And that's actually what we're going to CD into now. And if I do an LS, here you can see that we've got BookStack. And if I actually do a CD into BookStack, we'll see that there are two more folders in here, one for the data and one for the database. So what I want to do is actually back up a directory so that we can take a look here. Let me actually move that up. And then what I want to do is an rm -rf, and actually I want to do a sudo, and then BookStack like so, and hit enter. And if I do an LS, now that folder's gone. So now we've got a clean slate from which to start. So we'll go ahead and do that. And we'll jump back over to CasaOS and actually do the install process for BookStack and the database. So because the BookStack application needs a database in order to actually even start the setup process, the first thing we want to do is actually install the database container. So we're actually going to have to do two separate container installs in order to get this set up. I will say though, if you are a patron over on Patreon, obviously, you can just download these project files. They will be available over on Patreon. So if you want to just download and import these files, you can absolutely do that. Very straightforward to do that, and I'll show you real quick. You would just do a custom install. In fact, that's where we're going to be anyway. But right up here, you can click import, and then you can click app file, and then select the database as well as the application JSON folder or files that are available over there. Of course, do the database, import it, let it set up, and then do the application container and let it set up, and it should be just fine. So let's click cancel there, and we're just going to go through and we're going to fill in some data here. The Docker image, we're actually going to use a Linux server version of BookStack, both for the application as well as the database, because they're both cross-browser or cross platform compatible, whether it's Raspberry Pi or x86 or whatever. Linux server does a really great job of making things as compatible with as many different platforms as possible. So that's what we're going to use here. The application name, I'm going to call it BookStack, like so. Oops. I'm going to call it BookStack DB, like so. There we go. And this icon was actually just added this morning, so stoked on that. So for our web UI port here, because we're doing a database, we don't actually need to put a web UI port in here, so we can leave this blank. The ports below, I would actually advise adding ports here of 3306. However, something to keep in mind here is if you're going to have multiple applications that need a database like this, I would keep that in mind because you will want to incrementally update the host name or the host port here. So let's say you had another database that was already using port 3306. You could absolutely change that to 3307 as long as you leave the container port as 3306 for the internal port. I'm going to leave this as 3306 though, just because I don't have any other databases on here at the moment. Next, we're going to add a volume, and the volume, I'm actually going to use the same one that I had before. It's going to be home, Docker, BookStack, and then database, just like we saw when I was going through the terminal or the command line earlier. And then the Maria database internal uses just /config for its setup process. And then for the environmental variables, we're going to need a few of these. So we'll just do a few of those like so. The first one that we're going to do is PUID, and that will be 1000. Now, the PUID of 1000 is also the same as the PGID for 1000, and that's specific to the Pi user. Now, if you've changed the user, if you're using a username other than Pi for your CasaOS setup on a Raspberry Pi, you will need to change this number to reflect that. The way you can do that is if you open this, if you go back and you log into your server, you can do ID space and then whatever your login username is for when you remote into your, or when you SSH into your server here. So in this case, I'm going to use Pi. And here you can see my UID and GID are both 1000. If you had a different username, you would put that in instead and use the respective numbers that are available there that you would just put in over here. Hopefully that makes sense. So next is going to be PGID. Oops, PGID, also 1000. So next we've got the MySQL root password. I've got one that's generated over here. Of course, you'll want to change this, make it your own, so that you can have something secure that's not publicly known like this will be. Next, we'll do the time zone, and for me, that's going to be America/Denver. Below that, we're going to have a MySQL database name. I'm going to call it BookStack app. And then we're going to have a MySQL_user. And this is going to be BookStack. Of course, you can change these. Just make sure that if you change it here, you also change it in the settings of the actual application container. We need one more of these, and that's going to be for the MySQL password. Oops, darn it. Did it there. I added a device. I don't need to add a device. I need to add that password. And again, I've got another password down here. Change that for your settings here. So up here we've got the root password, and then down here we've got the application database password that we'll use. And really that's all we really need to do here. The memory limit you can set to whatever you want it to be. I'm on an 8 gig Raspberry Pi, so you can set this to whatever you want it to be for yours. CPU shares, restart policy, you can leave those alone or change them however you want to change them. And then the app description, you can put an app description in there if you want to, totally up to you. But next thing I want to do is actually click install. And it's going to go through the process of pulling everything, extracting, and then deploying this container based on the settings that we just gave it. Okay, so here we've got our BookStack database container sitting here. So let's click on settings and let's take a look at terminals and logs. Okay, looks like everything here is ready to go. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to close this. We're going to add a new app. We're going to do a custom install, and this time we're going to do the actual BookStack application for our setup here. I'm going to call this BookStack like so. And this time we are going to put a web UI port in here. By default, it is 6875. That is what the Linux server IO people, in fact, I think it's actually the BookStack developer as well, used this port as their default for the web application for in the browser. So that's what we're going to use there. We're going to do the same thing here, 6875, and then the internal port is 80. For our volumes, we're only going to need to add one volume here. And again, we're going to use the same schema, I guess, as our previous one. So we're going to do home docker bookstack data, and then we're going to do a /config. That's what they've got set up for the inside of the container there. And then below here, we're going to have a few different environmental variables that we'll need. So let's just open up a bunch of those. Again, our PUID and PGID are both 1000. Of course, change those per your specific setup. Below that, we're going to have an app URL. Now, this is one of those things that you'll need to put in there. And in this case, what we're going to do is I'm just going to grab this, put that in there, and I'm going to put in port 6875. Again, this is what we've got here and here, and this will be the URL that will access this on. If you decide later on to add Nginx Proxy Manager to your setup, you'll want to come back here and change this. If you don't, it won't work right. But we'll cover that in another video as well when we get Nginx Proxy Manager set up and running. So our DB host, we're going to put that in. And then we're actually going to put in the IP address here, like so. And then we're going to put in port 3306. Again, if you have multiple databases on here and you've got different ports for this, you would put in the appropriate port for the database for this particular application. So if you made it 3307, when we set up the application, you'd make it 3307 here as well. So next we're going to do, we're actually going to need one more of these. Let's do that. And our database user is BookStack. Oops, BookStack, like so. Our database password is, in this case, will be the database password, not the root password, but the database password that we set up in our previous container. And then we've got a database name, which in this case will be BookStack or BookStack app. Now, at this point, you can deploy this if you want to. However, if you wanted to, you could also add a few more environmental variables so that you can have mail working on your container. So if you want to deploy here, go right ahead. If you want to add mail, let's do that now. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a few more, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 more environmental variables. So we'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right. So our mail driver will be the next one, and that will be SMTP, unless you've got a different setting, but that's what we're going to use for this setup. In this case, the mail host will be smtp.gmail.com. The mail port is going to be 587. And then next, we're going to have mail encryption on port 587. That is for TLS. And then we're going to do some usernames and some passwords. You'll put in your email address. If you're using Gmail for this, you'll put in your Gmail address right here. Your password will go there. Same thing for that. It's going to be your Gmail password. Also, the from will be whatever email address you want to send from, probably the same as your Gmail account password or Gmail account address. And then a mail from name. I just set this up as BookStack. And then once you've got all of this information filled out, you can, of course, again, adjust your memory limit, CPU shares, restart policy, and app description, and make sure all of this is good. And then you can click install, and then the container will install, and you should be good to go. So we'll go ahead and click on install here. And it's going to go ahead and pull everything it needs to pull, extract, set up, do its thing. And then hopefully here in the next couple of minutes, this will be up and running and we can take a look. All right, so we've got our BookStack application up and going here, but right here, if we take a look, we can see that the CPU is still being kind of spun up a little bit. And when it kind of chills out, we should have a better idea that things are good to go. But what we can also do in the meantime is click on settings here, go to terminals and logs, click on logs. We'll give this a minute. Sometimes this happens. All right, so even though we got this name does not resolve, hang out for a minute. Here you can see that it is actually migrating the database. And once we get down here to where it says services.d done, at this point, we should be able to close this and close that and click here. And there we go. So now by default, the default login is admin@admin.com. And then I think it's password. There we go. Yep. So admin@admin.com, and then the password is password. Then you can get logged in. And then we can come into here and go to dark mode. And then we can edit profile. And here, we can change our email address and our password. Those are the two first things you should always do when they've got a predefined username and password to get logged in. You can select an image for that, like so. Change our language. Multi-factor authentication is also an option there. API tokens if you need one. At this point, we can just click on save, and now we are all set up and ready to go. And now we can start creating shelves and books and all kinds of content in here and have it stored for later. So guys, there you go. There's how to set up BookStack with a database, with and without having email attached to it for sending out password reminders and things like that, account confirmations, all that kind of stuff. So you got a couple of options as to whether or not you want to have email set up or not. Both of those versions of the application import files will be available again over on Patreon. So if you want to go ahead, jump over to Patreon, become a patron if you're not already, download these files and get them installed. Just got to make a couple of modifications for your particular setup in those imports, and then you're set up and ready to go in just a couple of minutes. So hopefully you found the video helpful. If you've got ideas for other content you'd like to see me set up and demonstrate here on CasaOS, definitely let me know. Again, I will be doing an Nginx proxy manager video here very, very soon so that we can demonstrate how to do that and actually have all of your applications available remotely if you decide you want to go that route as well. And with that said, I do again want to give a big shout out to my patrons. Thank you guys so much for being patrons and supporting the channel and helping me continue to create content. I really do appreciate you guys very, very much for your continued support. But I think with all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. So as always, thanks for your time. I always appreciate your support, and I'll talk to you in the next video.